Hey, welcome back, everybody. Um, January 15th, 2025. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today. I kind of went on an early 90s Clinton legacy video yesterday, and it kind of got me thinking a few things that I failed to mention in the early 90s. Um, in 1992, we had the Rodney King um, uh, non guilty verdict came out for the cops. We had the race riots down in Los Angeles. I'm sure everybody old enough was watching it on TV if you weren't there. Um, I talked a little bit about the Green Initiative or Agenda 21 with Nancy Pelosi kind of spearheading that when she first got in there. Um, I also remember in 1992, I remember watching CNN, and on the bottom of the ticker, and it said Nelson Mandela dies in prison. And it's like, I know who Peter Gabriel is, and I know that he wrote a song about Biko, who died in prison. And a lot of people, the Mandela effect kind of confused the two. But I remember watching the funeral procession of Nelson Mandela on CNN in 1992. Um, and then what I also forgot was to mention was in 1993 you had the World Trade Center, the first World Trade Center bombing that was pulled off supposedly with a moving van and fertilizer, um, and that was in an underground parking garage. A lot of people died. They blamed it on Osama bin Laden all the way back in 1993. And then, not even 2 years later, in Oklahoma City, you had two. The story was that two domestic people, Timothy McVeigh and I can never remember the other guy, um, but they blew up a government building with a bunch of, they had a daycare and it killed a bunch of kids, and it was terrible. Um, but those were kind of paving the way, in my opinion. Hindsight is 2020. That both of these events were false flags that led up to the 9/11 event. But it's the more you look back. I mean, I didn't even talk about the Ruby Ridge in Idaho, and I can't remember, that might have been before the 90s, maybe it's 1988, 89. But then you had the Waco um, incident with the FBI setting David Koresh's cult's buildings on fire, um, on TV. Janet Reno, thank you. Wow. And then, once you kind of problem, reaction, solution, the order from chaos, as it were. I mean, we talked about, since the French and American Revolution, the Rothschild banking system has funded both sides of each conflict, war, border dispute, whatever it may be. And, you can look at what happened, um, how an assassination of Franz Ferdinand in starting World War One. It was like a young kid that did it. He was like 15, 16, 17. Um, that started World War One. Then we know what happened in World War Two, which led to Operation Paperclip, which brought all of the top Nazi scientists and researchers to the U.S. side while pardoning any war crimes. That's how you got Werner von Braun running NASA. That's how you got Alan Dulles as the director of the CIA. I'm sure I could go on a laundry list of people, but when you remember that George Patton, probably the greatest U.S. general of the last 2 centuries, he, at the end of the war, said we fought the wrong enemy. And coincidentally, 2 days later, he died in a military Jeep accident. And so I always thought about that. Not one Nazi party member signed the the surrender of Germany. And there were over 400 U-boats that got away with the top Nazi leadership that didn't get transferred to Operation Paperclip in the United States. So think about, the boys from Brazil, how they say that there was a dictator in Argentina that allowed the Nazis to colonize down there after World War II. And you can go there to this day and you'll see some like German looking buildings. And uh, there was a History Channel show about it. Watch it. It was crazy. Um, but I believe most of the top Nazi leadership went to the Antarctic outposts that they created. They were the first, Germany was the first one to fly over Antarctica with the flags and claim all the land. And after World War II, uh, Admiral Richard E. Byrd, who is the youngest admiral ever, he first was the first person to explore the North Pole and fly over it in an aeroplane. And he was the first person from the U.S. to go to Antarctica and fly over. And when he came back, there was a 1940s, still on YouTube, where they asked him about it. And he said there's land that's bigger than the United States of America that has every resource known to man, and no one would ever need to fight about resources ever again. Well, then the Antarctic Treaty came up, and 52 countries agreed that no one can go there. So it just all of the spider senses, the my Jedi force is I don't know. Again, it just makes me wonder why no one could go down there. But we were talking about the Clintons' legacy last time, the crimes bill. You had the Agenda 21, the Telecommunications Act, Waco, the first Twin Towers attack in 1993, the underground truck in the garage. Then you had Oklahoma City bombing. And again, I think they were used in such a way to create a sense of fear about terrorism. And I think that coincided with, the Patriot Act and the TSAs allowing you to go through an X-ray machine now. And it's just kind of out of control. But Agenda 21, that was the precursor to the Paris Accords of 2015, climate change, and all that jazz. The Paris Accords working with the World Banks, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organizations, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum, the Church of Rome, the Jesuits, the royal families that own 97% of everything since before Christ was around. They have used this initiative to get rid of the carbon that they don't want. And that's you and me. And that's the carbon that they were really trying to get away with. And why do I say that? Gee, fluoride in the water for over 50 years, genetically modifying your food for over 50 years, poisoning you with pharmaceuticals, never getting all this money for cures. And after all this time, they still haven't found any cures. Why would you give these charities that have not done anything in 50, 60, 100 years, why would you continue to give them money unless it was a money laundering scheme, right? Think of the Clinton Foundation after the Haiti earthquake, where all the children went missing. And then this one lady that worked for Hillary Clinton went to jail because she kidnapped a bunch of Haitian children after the earthquakes. Yeah, real stuff. So, when we have the usual suspect, the powers that should not be, the Decepticons, oh my, it's a sabotage. And, we talked about that yesterday. I remember Bill Clinton, before he became elected, had a quote talking about the shadow government within our own government. And he was the first U.S. president to take money from China. And you see all the stuff that we've been talking about the last couple of days that Clintons were up to. And we know what happens to all of their business associates and lawyers and anybody that kind of worked with them. kind of scary. And it's like I remember that George W. Bush Sr. in 1991 had a presidential address, and I'm going to quote this, okay? He said this: "This is an opportunity to forge for ourselves and future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, um, he just says they need an order of credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders," which, if you know anything about the Balfour Declaration and who was responsible for recreating Israel, it was the, drum roll please, Rothschilds, the international banking system. And we all know what happened when Israel was established. They had war a couple years after it was founded. They had multiple border skirmishes, the 6 Day War, all that jazz. And, the Middle East has been, since the dawn of time, they've been having, B crap go on. So, not a real shock there. But, and I want to switch gears here. You guys have heard about all the drones and the fog and stuff that looks like snow if you put a flashlight on it and all that jazz. And a guy that I watch, his name's Static in the Attic. Go subscribe to him. He's got some really interesting takes on things. And he did a video about the fog and how it was tested, but he didn't dispute whether or not where he got the information. He just provided what this person said. And they said that the same agent, a bacteria also considered a parasite, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Sierra marcescens is what they sprayed in 1950 in San Francisco in Operation Sea Spray. And TBD if that was a real thing or they just found out what was in the original 1950 agents that were used against us. So who knows? TBD. Like I said, we'll keep tabs on that. But that was biological warfare on U.S. citizens in 1950. Do you think they actually stopped? Really? I mean, we were talking about that upstate New York facility, Montauk, where they weaponized Lyme's disease. It somehow escaped, okay? And how many times have you heard of 12 monkeys escaping from a biolab in Georgia lately? I mean, and then it mysteriously burns down, and the inspector that works for the state dies of a heart attack less than a week after it happened. I'm sure coincidence, surely coincidences, you know. So Carl Schwab, the leader of the World Economic Forum, he came out and he told you, you will own the nothing, you will eat the bugs, and you will be happy. And, when we look into all the things, in the early 90s that happened, we had the LA race riots, you had Waco on the back of Ruby Ridge in Idaho, and the FBI really screwing up to the Mandela effect taking place, why it's named the Mandela effect. I saw the funeral in 1992 on live TV. And I know who Biko is, and I know who Nelson Mandela was. And the guy that was South African president for almost 20 years was definitely not the real guy. Okay? You can call me a Looney Tune or whatever you want. I'm a big boy. You can say whatever you want. On this channel, you can say whatever you want here. I'm not going to judge you, okay? So biological warfare against the United States citizens since at least the 1940s or 50s minimum. And then you have the Tuskegee experiments and the Black Ops facility in upstate New York. You had the crimes bill led by Sleepy, Creepy Joe and Bill Clinton that put more people in jail in the United States than probably any other countries combined. We have that many people in prison. And then we saw the terrorist attack, and I put that in quotation marks, of 1993 and the Oklahoma City bombings. And we know that that was an inside job. You know, the guy in the Cybertruck recently, he was trying to do the OKC, except he wasn't in the underground in the World Trade. He wasn't in the underground parking lot. Apparently, it doesn't work unless you get down there, right? Um, I'm sure that the FBI wasn't involved in every domestic terrorist scheme that you ever heard of in the last 20 years, and they just got the stupidest guys to, and they probably weren't guilty of anything except by association. And take it from me, I got expelled in high school 3 different times, and the first time it was guilt by association. So you just don't get yourself into any trouble. You know, take care of yourselves and all your loved ones, and we got to pray for the hurricane victims of the Carolinas, the Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, the fire victims of Hawaii, California currently, East Palestine. I mean, we could go on and on and on. But my point is problem, reaction, solution, profit. Because one of my favorite things that I've come to find out in researching a lot of evil things in the world is profit over people. Hashtag 100% profit over people. That's why all these, cure for cancer and cure for diabetes that have been around for decades and decades and gotten billions and billions of dollars haven't come up with any legitimate cures. I mean, have they even made any advancements in the treatment of those diseases? And I mean, I don't have diabetes, I don't have cancer, hopefully. And so I'm not a medical doctor, but I just question, ever since COVID, especially, trusting the science. And we know how that went. So I can see we're running a little bit long in this video, so let's wrap it up. The Agenda 2020, 21, that was the precursor for the Paris Climate Accord of 2015, the green scam. It's the biggest scam out there. They got all this money. They got like $8 billion to make electric vehicle charging stations under Biden. And in 4 years and $7.5 billion, they built 7 total stations across the country. They got $42.5 million to hook up rural people to the internet. They got $42.5 billion. Not one person, not one business, nothing. Not one person with $42.5 billion got hooked up. And then you wonder why the victims of all these natural disasters are only getting $700 or a loan. And on that, I'm just going to say, profit over people, follow the money, and most roads, if not all, lead to Rome. On that note, thanks for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. It's free. Appreciate y'all. And we'll see you until the next one. Peace.